Our featured guest tonight is considered by many to be the modern king of the blues, and his 26 Billboard number ones are a testament to that fact. Here to chat about his incredible career, his brand new album, Blues Deluxe Volume 2, and his current tour, which has stops right here on the Gulf Coast this coming March in both Pensacola and Biloxi, is legendary guitarist Joe Bonamassa. Joe, welcome to the show.
How you doing? Nice to see you.
It's good to see you. Hey, I'd like to start off at the beginning for you. What first drew you to the guitar rather than some other instrument?
Well, my dad played, and that's how I got to it. Most kids who play are, introduced by a relative. In my case, it was my father. And there was always, it goes back to my grandfather's guitar, and I just started messing with it. You hear that story time and time again. And yeah, my father had a great, music collection, and my grandfather played trumpet. My great grandfather played trumpet, and over 100 years of the Bonamassas making a living in the music business, which is kind of crazy to think about it, especially how this business goes.
Do you remember what your first guitar was?
Yeah, my first guitar was an Erlewine, a Chiquita guitar, which was designed as a travel guitar in the 80s. Late 70s, and it fit into a little bag, and it was about 3/4 scale, and it looked, it was designed for people to just drag on airplanes and in their hotel rooms and practice on it when their other guitars were in the truck or something like that.
Any chance you still got that? Because I know
I don't have that one. I have one like it, but I don't have that one. I mean, up until the last 20 years, for me to get a new guitar, something had to go, and that's just how it is being a collector.
Before we talk about your incredible new album, I just ran across a few biography questions that seemed almost too fantastic to be true, but I know they are. How in the world does it come about that a preteen Joe Bonamassa finds himself opening for the legendary B.B. King at I think what were you, 12 or something?
Oh, so 12, yeah. I was playing gigs in upstate New York, and a promoter called and was like, "Hey, do you want to open up for BB King?" And I was like, "Absolutely." They called my parents, and luckily it was on a Saturday, and because I was in 7th or 8th grade at the time, and it was one of those things where I was very lucky early on. I got to meet my heroes and got to play with a lot of them, and I got to study with guitar players like Danny Gatton, and got to meet Willie Dixon and all these cats. So, I was lucky enough to, I'm 46, but I was young enough in the business to where these guys were still around, got to play with Albert Collins, got to, see these people before they died,
Yeah. Was it through that incredible connection that you met your future bandmates in Bloodline? I mean, you wound up playing with a storied bunch of music families with kids, like Miles Davis, like Robbie Krieger, Barry Oakley. I mean, reading it on paper, it sounds like almost like a junior supergroup.
Well, it was a junior supergroup. It was kind of the way the label saw it. But that was 30 years ago, which is, believe it or not, it's like the record came out 30 years ago, 1994. 29, but for our purposes being, let's call it 30. But yeah, I was a teenager, I was 13 or 14 when I was doing that stuff and making records when didn't even have a driver's license. But, I was working with Warren Haynes, and I was down in Memphis with Joe Hardy and all those guys. It was a special time, especially for a kid, just getting to see this all, for the first time.
Your debut solo album, A New Day Yesterday, actually had a guest appearance by Gregg Allman, one of the all-time greats in my book. How did that collaboration come about?
Well, it came through Tom Dowd, who produced the record. And Tom produced all the Alman stuff from basically day one till, the last album record. And so that introduction came through Tom Dowd, and I ultimately ended up touring with Gregg and doing a bunch of shows with him and his solo band. He was super nice, and and Leslie West was on that record, and Rick Derringer was on that record. So it was pretty cool, to see that 25 years ago come to fruition, and it was just one of those things where, I was a kid. I didn't realize I was going to be on stage or playing with any of these people. It just happened to work out that way.
And not only did you have BB King and Gregg Allman on your CV, but you did a duet at Royal Albert Hall with none other than Eric Clapton.
Yeah.
What stands out to you about that moment looking back?
Well, it was the big break that I needed. And I can never thank Eric enough for doing that for me. He didn't have to. And I just asked him, I wrote him a letter, and he liked me enough to say, hey, listen, I'll come play a song with you at your gig,
That's just so cool.
And so cool and so nice and such a he's done a lot for a lot of people. He doesn't get a lot of credit for that, but he's done a lot for a lot of us, giving us stages and things like that. So I can never repay him the debt of gratitude that he had. I owe him for the rest of my life because I don't think you and I'd be having this conversation if it wasn't for that moment.
That show also featured the incredible Paul Rodgers, who I know was one of your heroes. What were you feeling the first time you played with Paul, and what do you remember about that moment?
Paul's been a hero of mine since day one when I heard Free, Tons of Sobs was the record, for me. And him and Andy Frazier and Simon Kirke and Paul Kossoff. I mean, it's like the fact that they're not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is criminal. I mean, that band has influenced so many rock bands, and still to this day is like, to me, it's the perfect four-piece. There's just not a better four-piece in my book. And Paul's voice is just insane. I mean, to this day, he's in the same keys. He's it's just a absolute champion and one of the nicest people in the world. So
I was wondering, has or did anything ever compete with the blues in your musical tastes?
Absolutely. I mean, I like all kinds of, I like prog rock. I like, Bruce Hornsby. I like, all this kind of stuff, I like some Americana, not all of it. I like, classical music. I like, some opera, the blues was always kind of the mainstay, but not to the point where it prevented me from listening to other music.
Your new album, Blues Deluxe Volume 2, just dropped and has been getting some fantastic reviews and endorsements. When did the journey towards this new album start for you?
A year and a half ago. I want to do something for the 20th anniversary of the record that basically saved my career. And we didn't have any bonus tracks. We didn't have anything really. From the first album, which we did with $10,000 in a week, mixed and mastered. And so I said, well, let's do another volume. Let's do Blues Deluxe Volume 2. Because like Blues Deluxe, when that came out, there was never supposed to be a second volume. It was like, this was sink or swim moment. So I wasn't even thinking of, well, I'll put out a Volume 2 eventually. Like, no way. That wasn't happening, And so ultimately, that was something for me that was it's a special record that we were able to survive 20 years after the first one. And it came out this week in October of 2023. I don't know when this is going to air, but the actual anniversary was June of 2023. But the fact that vinyl takes so much time to make and order, and it took 6 months, we were delayed, but it's the 20th anniversary year. So not to the day, but for the Anoraks, but don't worry about it.
I was going to ask you what you made you finally land on the title, Blues Deluxe Volume 2 all these years after Volume 1, but obviously because the 20th anniversary.
It was the 20th anniversary, and it, it could have been Volume 2 or 2. But there was no guarantees there was going to be a 2.